19th century politics. Some general characteristics of American politics in the late 19th century. I have the list here. When you study the presidential elections, they tended to be close. High voter turnout, 75 to 80% of registered voters. 19th century politics, was in a lot of ways a form of entertainment. People treated it like a sporting event. It was entertaining. Campaigns made their own songs. People did parades and barbecues and rallies, and uh, newspapers published speeches, and newspapers in the late 19th century tended to be openly partisan, and they were honest about it. Today the media lies about it. They're extremely biased, but they aren't truthful about it. In the 19th century, um, people engaged in politics as a form of entertainment. It was viewed as a civic duty. Um, you'd have 75 to 80% of registered voters participating. You know, and obviously the voting pool in the late 19th century was smaller than it is today, so that's part of it as well. The Republican Party generally won the White House. Congress, mostly Republican in the late 19th century. However, it would go back and forth fairly often. And so what you see when you see you see wild voter swings in Congress. When one congressional election, the Republicans would win 100 seats. 2 years later, lose 100 seats. And the Democrats same, like lose, win, lose, win. Um, today, like 98, 99% of incumbents win their re-elections. And so it's kind of hard for us to kind of understand how wildly late 19th century Congress changed quite a bit. You weren't being an incumbent, you weren't guaranteed anything. The incumbency rate was a lot lower back than it is today. Um, and so politics, people engaged in it. It was you're achieving your team's vision of America in the future. Who voted for whom? The Republican Party. The Republican Party nationally generally won the northern states, urban centers, New York, Boston, Philadelphia. States like New Jersey and California regularly voted Republican. Democrats generally won the South. If the era from about 1872 to the 1960s, 70s even. It was called the Solid South. The South generally won. If you were a Democrat campaigning in the South, you were going to win. In some states like Texas, there was no Republican Party at all. Farmers, white minorities, immigrant Catholics, Irish, generally voted a Democrat. States like New York generally voted Democrat during the late 19th century. Every era has their important issues of the day, what they think is most important for the electorate. We think of our issues today that we argue about on social media, on TV, on radio, podcasts, and all that. The biggest issue of the at least a decade after the Civil War was Reconstruction. Rebuilding the South, and later, more recent historiography, the last 35, 40 years, is focused on Reconstruction of the nation. The entire country was changing. We've just gone through the entire country had gone through a 4-year civil war. 11 states had decided not to be in the Union, and the Lincoln and the Union Army spent 4 years invading, conquering, and forcing 11 states back into the Union to maintain the Union by force. And so Republicans, before 1877, Republicans were very big on Reconstruction. The South needed to be reformed. The South needed to be punished. The South needed to look more like the North. Black civil rights needed to be, enshrined. After 1877, it's a dead issue. There's no, once Reconstruction ends in the late 1870s, into the 80s, it's not really an issue anymore. One of the main things that the Republican Party ran on in that first decade or so into the 1880s after the Civil War was it's called waving the bloody shirt sometimes. All they had to say is, well, the South, the Democrats South, they fought the Civil War. They left the Union, fought the Civil War, and so kind of all you have to do is say, well, Lincoln and the Republican Party won the Civil War, and kind of just have to remind voters of that, and the Republican candidate would generally do very well. In the North, obviously in the South, that didn't fly. Democrats generally argued that Reconstruction was unconstitutional, tyrannical, an overextension of federal power, violation of the Constitution, violated states' rights. Tariff issues are big during that era, as they were before the Civil War. Before the income tax in the early 20th century, the 19th century U.S. government made most of its money through the tariff. Republicans wanted high tariffs to protect industry. Democrats generally wanted low tariffs to protect farmers. There are some issues that are so supported by the electorate as a whole that both political parties start sounding the exact same. And one example is civil service reform. As the federal government grew by leaps and bounds during and after the Civil War, as Americans became more in contact with the government, the media, newspapers, people became more aware of inefficiencies in government and sometimes corruption in government. It was more obvious. It was more reported on. It was more focused on. And so, as the electorate was demanding civil service reform, meaning patronage needs to be done away with, backroom deals, bribery, that all needs to be done away with. And so you're making government jobs based on merit rather than, whether you supported the right team during the election. And so both political parties jumped on the civil service bandwagon that they would manage America's American government more efficiently and less corrupt than the other team. And so both parties were big on civil service reform. The currency issue, one of the more popular things people know or think they know about the late 19th century is the U.S. economy was volatile in the late 19th century. The business cycle, wild extremes between prosperity and growing and economic depression, recession and depression. And so, the U.S. economy is transitioning from an agricultural to an industrial economy. The Civil War, you have a change in status of a labor class. And so that's going to be disruptive to the economy. And then two other issues also add to the volatility of the late 19th century. Whether the U.S. Money supply should be based on gold and silver, and whether the U.S. should use paper money or greenbacks or paper money as part of their economy. Republicans argued that gold should be the basis of American currency. We were already on the gold standard. It's more valuable and plentiful. And so for the Republican Party, it made more fiscal sense economically for the U.S. currency to be based on the gold standard. Democrats generally argued for silver being the basis for our money. For a lot of Democrats, the moneyed interests had a lot of gold, and so the argument was you can weaken the moneyed interest politically by switching to the silver standard. And what would happen is, when Republicans were in control of Congress, they would pass legislation making the gold standard the foundation of our money. Democrats win 2 years later, they would immediately pass legislation to switch our currency to the silver standard. And so that makes your money supply, volatile. When the value of the money, the foundational value of your money is based on, different metals. What's interesting is, you look at Nevada mine owners during the 19th century, they generally voted Democrat, and you kind of see why. If the silver you're pulling out of the ground is going to be a lot more valuable if it's the foundation of American currency. And so you have that issue there. Greenbacks. During the late 19th century, the argument for having greenbacks or paper money, what you and I have today. We carry around, we don't really carry around cash anymore. It's card, but like if you have cash, you go to the bank, you have your $20. That's greenbacks. That's paper money. The Republican Party generally argued that no, you should not have paper money in your money supply. That's finance, fiscally irresponsible. Paper is worthless. Okay, paper is worthless. And any paper money you had would need to be backed up by something real, like gold or silver. And so even with paper money, you couldn't have an inexhaustible supply. You could only have as much paper money as you had gold in the vaults to back that up, right? Otherwise, it's a fake economy. It's paper. Paper's not worth anything. Why? Because paper's so plentiful. Paper is extremely plentiful, and so there's no reason it doesn't have any value. And so the Republican Party argued that paper money would badly inflate the economy. Lower classes would be hurt as the prices of goods would become too high. And so, gold was a foundational, valuable currency. It would keep prices low, and it would, it's more, able to. It's something of trust you can exchange it with as a medium of exchange. The Democrat Party argued for greenbacks. Paper money circulates easier than gold. It would increase the money supply. More people would have money and more of it. And so the argument is, for Democrats, the argument was that it would overcome inflation. As people had more money and made more money, wages, the argument was, it'll keep up, wages would keep up with inflation. What's interesting when you study American history, wages never, hardly if ever, keep up with inflation. But the theory is that. And so you're kind of gambling that when you have paper money or too much of it, you're gambling that wages will keep up with inflation. When you study economic history, at least for American history, wages are hardly ever keep up with inflation. The argument for Democrats would break the power of the moneyed interest because more people would have money, and more people would have access to money as it circulates in the economy more. From the Republican point of view, it's extremely financially irresponsible. You'll destroy the U.S. economy. You can only have as much money as you have gold to back it up. if you have more paper money than gold to back it up, that paper money is even less valuable. And to give you an example, in this day and age, 2025, the U.S. dollar is worth practically nothing. Because why? There's way, 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 way more money, paper money in circulation than there is gold in vaults, in America's vaults to back it up. It's one reason why our money is so worthless today. We have way more paper currency than we have gold to back it up.